You're just too much drama. Stay away from the wedding. That was the text. 10 words. 10 words that flipped a switch in my brain I didn't even know had a toggle. No hello, no I'm sorry. Just a digital middle finger sent at 11:42 p.m. After months of me bending over backward, turning my bank account into a charity ward, and acting as the unofficial project manager for her life, I was suddenly a nuisance. A liability. It's funny how years of resentment and tiny, microscopic slights can pile up so neatly behind a single message. It's like a row of dominoes you didn't even realize you'd been setting up for 3 decades. You just keep placing them, one by one, thinking you're building something sturdy. Then, one day, the person you built it for gives the first one a shove, and the whole structure comes screaming down. My name's Marcus. I'm 34. If you had polled my family 2 months ago, they would have told you I was the responsible one. The fixer. The guy who always shows up with a jumper cable, a spare key, or a checkbook. But in the twisted logic of my family, being the dependable one also made me the easiest one to walk over. I was the floor mat, durable, reliable, and meant to be stepped on. Let me rewind, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. This isn't just some petty story about a wedding gone wrong or a bridezilla having a meltdown. This is about a 30-year-old imbalance finally hitting its boiling point. It's about what happens when you stop playing the role your family scripted for you and start playing the one they actually should have feared. I'm the oldest of 3. My sister, Alyssa, is 29 and our youngest brother, Liam, is 26. Our parents are still together, still living in that same drafty 2-story house in upstate New York where we grew up. From the outside, we look like the standard American blueprint. Inside, we're a masterclass in polite dysfunction. We weren't the kind of family where plates flew across the room or yelling matches woke up the neighbors. No, our dysfunction was quieter. It was like a dining table with one short leg that nobody ever bothered to fix. Instead of putting a shim under it, they just expected me to keep my foot under the corner at all times to keep the drinks from spilling. Alyssa was the golden child. It's a cliché because it's a reality. From the time we were kids, she possessed this strange immunity to consequences. If she was late to school, it was the bus driver's fault. If she failed a midterm, the teacher had it out for her. If she got caught sneaking out at 2 a.m., my parents would sigh and say, "She's just expressing herself, Marcus. Don't be so uptight." Meanwhile, I was the designated adult. I was expected to pull straight A's, hit every curfew, and keep the peace. I was the one they leaned on when the mortgage got tight or when mom's back flared up and she couldn't stand long enough to cook. I used to think that was just the big brother tax. I thought it was what siblings did. It took me 30 years to realize Alyssa wasn't just struggling. She wasn't even trying to pull her own weight. The cracks really turned into canyons about 6 months ago when Alyssa got engaged to Jordan. Now, Jordan's a decent guy, quiet, tech-y, works in IT. We've shared enough beers for me to know he genuinely loves her. But I also know he's completely blind to the woman he's actually marrying. He sees the curated Alyssa, the one with the soft smiles, the aesthetic Pinterest boards, and the gentle laugh. He doesn't see the woman who hasn't held a stable job in 3 years or the one who treats anyone who dares to challenge her like a war criminal. The second the engagement happened, the family group chat turned into a digital supernova. Alyssa was spamming ring photos. Mom was flooding the chat with crying face emojis. Dad was already asking about lakefront venues. And I, being the responsible fixer, did the stupidest thing I've ever done. I offered to help. I didn't even hesitate. That's the curse of being the dependable one. You offer help before anyone even thinks to ask, and you don't even expect a thank you. It's just your default setting. I knew my parents' savings were basically non-existent, and I knew Alyssa had champagne tastes on a boxed wine budget. I figured I'd toss in a few grand to get the ball rolling. A nice gesture. Except a few things turned into a landslide. First, it was the venue. She found this stunning lakeside lodge, the kind of place that looks like a movie set. The deposit was $3,000 just to hold the date. Alyssa called me late on a Tuesday, sobbing because the mean lady at the office told her they'd lose the date if they didn't pay by Friday. Apparently, Jordan's bonus was delayed, and my parents were waiting on a check. "I've got you, Liz," I said, like an idiot. I wired the $3,000 directly to the lodge. I even put the reservation in her name so she could feel like the one in control. Then came the dress. She dragged me and Mom to this boutique where the floors smelled like expensive candles and the dresses cost more than my first car. She found the one. I watched her twirl in front of those massive mirrors, looking like a princess, while Mom dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief like she was auditioning for a Hallmark original movie. The price tag? $1,750. Once again, the excuses flowed. Dad's retirement check was late. Jordan's car needed urgent repairs. "I'll pay you back as soon as the wedding gifts come in, Marcus. I promise. You're the best brother ever," she squealed, hugging me. I paid. I swiped the card and felt a little twinge in my gut, the first real red flag. But I ignored it. I told myself it was for family. I didn't realize I wasn't helping her build a wedding, I was funding my own exile. I didn't know that 3 weeks later, those thousands of dollars would be met with a 10-word text telling me I wasn't even invited to the party I bought. Would you like me to continue the story and detail how the confrontation unfolded and the eventual pro-revenge Marcus took? You know what's wild? I didn't even feel used at the time. Not really. In the moment, I felt included. It was this intoxicating, rare high, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, this would be the one family milestone where I wasn't the outsider looking in from the sidelines. I thought I had finally graduated from being the useful tool to being a brother she actually wanted around. Alyssa started flooding my inbox with links to caterers, curated Spotify playlists, and even asked for my artistic eye on centerpiece designs. I was on cloud 9. For a few weeks, I felt like I actually mattered to her beyond my bank account. But then, the shift happened. About 3 weeks ago, the warmth evaporated. Alyssa went radio silent in the family group chat. My texts, simple things like asking if she liked the salmon or the steak option, went unanswered for days. When she did pick up the phone, her voice was clipped, cold, and dripping with a distracted irritation, as if my very existence was a chore she had to check off her list. I told myself it was just wedding stress. I made excuses for her because that's what I've been trained to do since I was 10 years old. I figured she was overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the event I was bankrolling. Then came the slip-up from Liam. My youngest brother, who is, let's be honest, allergic to any form of effort or discretion, casually mentioned the bridal shower. He told me he and his girlfriend were heading out to pick up a gift. My stomach did a slow, nauseating somersault. "The bridal shower?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "When is that?" "Saturday, man. Didn't you get the invite?" He pulled up his phone and showed me. There it was, a digital guest list of 50 people. My name was nowhere on it. Memories of her crashing on my couch for 3 months, eating my food, and forgetting to pay a dime of rent. Memories of her rolling her eyes at me during Thanksgiving because I wanted to talk about something other than her latest influencer aspirations. All those tiny slights had built an invisible mountain. And with one 10-word text, Alyssa had invited me to start the avalanche. I picked up the phone and dialed the Lakeside Lodge first. "Yes, hello," I said, my voice as smooth as glass. "This is Marcus. I'd like to cancel the reservation and request a full refund of my deposit. According to the contract, since we're outside the 60-day window, that shouldn't be a problem, right?" The carnage was only just beginning. And now I was finally staring at the summit of this mountain of disrespect. I didn't text her back. I didn't call. I didn't need a screaming match or a dramatic confrontation to feel validated. I just needed peace. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't done testing my patience. Before I could even fully process the digital slap in the face she'd sent me, my phone started blowing up with calls from the vendors. At first, I thought it was standard procedure. Final confirmations, arrival times, the usual logistics. But as I picked up the phone for the florist, then the decorator, then the lighting guy, the picture became sickeningly clear. Alyssa had been busy. She'd been calling them all morning, demanding to be the sole point of contact, trying to scrub my name from the files, and aggressively inquiring about the remaining balances. Except there was one tiny detail she overlooked. I'd already paid most of them in full. The florist sounded hesitant, her voice crackling with professional awkwardness. "Hey Marcus? I'm a bit confused. Alyssa called and said you were just helping out with the initial legwork, but that she'd be handling everything from here on out. She wanted to change the entire floral scheme to something way more expensive. But since your name is the only one on the legally binding contract, I wanted to double-check before we let her override anything." I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there, frozen in the silence of my kitchen. It hit me like a physical weight. She wasn't just cutting me out of the wedding emotionally. She was attempting a hostile takeover of the wedding I had built for her. She wanted to keep the fruit of my labor while pruning me out of the family tree. This wasn't wedding stress. This wasn't some bridezilla phase that would pass once the honeymoon started. This was calculated. This was the behavior of a person who wanted my bank account, not my brotherhood. And the absolute worst part? My parents were the ones handing her the shovel to bury me. I found out a day later when I swung by their house to pick up some mail. Mom met me at the door with that practiced, tight smile she uses when she's pretending a crisis isn't happening. She had a glass of white wine in her hand, despite it being barely noon. She waved me in, acting like everything was perfectly fine, which made my skin crawl. "Where's Dad?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Oh, he's out picking up some supplies for Alyssa's welcome bags," she said, taking a dainty sip. "You know, the little hotel favors for the guests. She's doing custom candles, mini champagne bottles. The whole works. It's going to be so elegant." I blinked, stunned. "Welcome bags? With what money?" I thought she was broke. Mom paused, and for a split second, a flicker of genuine guilt washed over her face before she masked it with a sigh. "Well, we're helping, Marcus. It's her big day. We want it to be perfect." I couldn't believe it. They were throwing even more money at her. Money they didn't have, after she had just treated me like a piece of trash. After she uninvited me and told me I was too much drama, they were doubling down on her. I set the mail down, my heart feeling like lead, and turned to leave. I didn't trust myself to open my mouth. But as I reached the door, Mom said something that made the world stop spinning. "Marcus, she told me you threatened to ruin the wedding." I turned slowly, my blood turning to ice. "What?" "She said you were upset about not being the center of attention, and that you were trying to sabotage her vendors." She was crying, Marcus. I've never seen her so hurt. "Why would you do that?" For a moment, I actually couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was tilting. It was like I'd stepped into a parallel dimension where the hero was the villain and the truth didn't exist. She hadn't just insulted me. She had launched a preemptive character assassination to make sure Mom and Dad wouldn't listen to my side of the story. "She lied to you," I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with the realization that my own mother believed a convenient lie over a lifetime of my proven loyalty. Mom didn't reply. She just looked away, swirled her wine, and adjusted a picture frame on the wall. That was it. The breaking point. The moment in the movie where the soundtrack cuts out and the camera zooms in on the lead's face as the last bridge burns. My own mother believed her over me. I left without another word. I got into my car and sat in the driveway, my hands gripped so tightly on the steering wheel that my knuckles turned white. I sat there for 10 minutes, just breathing, letting the hurt turn into a cold, hard clarity. When I finally got home, I didn't reach for a drink. I reached for my laptop. I sat at my desk and started making a list. Every vendor I had booked, every deposit I had wired, every contract that bore my signature and my social security number. I pulled up the paper trail, the email receipts, the text confirmations, the bank statements. It was all there. The florist, the venue, the lighting crew, the decorator, the DJ, the photographer. I had the receipts. I had the power. And since I was too much drama to be a guest, I decided I was far too much drama to be the benefactor. I started making calls, one by one. I didn't yell at the vendors. I didn't rant about my sister. I remained eerily calm, the kind of calm that precedes a hurricane. I told them clearly and professionally that I was canceling all bookings made under my name. Personal emergency, I told them. I need to revoke the reservations immediately. Most were understanding. Some were disappointed. A few asked if I was 100% sure. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. The venue was the big one, the crown jewel. A $3,000 deposit, non-refundable unless canceled more than 30 days in advance. We were at the 31-day mark. I made the call, signed the digital cancellation form, and watched the confirmation sent notification pop up on my screen. The stage was set. The lights were off. The wedding of the century had just been deleted, and Alyssa had no idea she was about to walk into an empty room. The refund was slated to hit my card within 5 business days. The paper trail was clean, the numbers were back in my court, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. But because I'm thorough, and maybe because a small, cold part of me wanted her to feel the floor drop away just like I had, I forwarded the cancellation notice to Alyssa. No subject line. No passive-aggressive regards. Just the PDF attachment of her dream venue vanishing into the digital ether. 15 minutes later, my phone vibrated so hard it nearly walked off the coffee table. I didn't pick up. I let it ring until the silence returned, only for it to start again 5 seconds later. Then came the texts, a rapid-fire barrage of desperation and vitriol. WTF is this? Marcus, pick up your phone. Why would you do this? This is so petty. You are literally ruining my life right now. Do you have any idea what you've done? Jordan's parents already booked their flights from across the country. Everyone is coming. You've always been jealous of me, admit it. You're a sick person. If you don't fix this right now, I swear to God, you are dead to this family. I didn't type a single character in response. I simply tapped her name and hit block. Like clockwork, Mom was next. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a live audience. I let her go straight to voicemail. The message she left was nearly 3 minutes long, a shaky, high-pitched rambling session filled with words like disappointed, shocked, and ungrateful. It was unbelievable. I had dumped thousands of dollars into a wedding I was explicitly banned from attending, yet somehow, in the twisted theater of our family dynamic, I was the villain of the piece. I honestly thought that would be the end of it. I figured they'd rage text themselves into exhaustion, realize the bank was closed, and eventually move on to scrambling for a backup plan. I thought I could finally reclaim my peace and watch the fallout from a safe distance. But I had underestimated the sheer, frantic entitlement of a golden child who has finally been told no. 3 days later, on a quiet Sunday, the bill came due. I remember it vividly because I had just settled in with a bowl of leftover Thai basil chicken and was halfway through a rewatch of The Americans. Then came the knock. It wasn't a friendly tap. It was a loud, sharp, rhythmic pounding, the kind that screams, "This isn't an Amazon delivery." I muted the TV, my heart thudding in my throat, and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole and felt a wave of cold disgust. It was Alyssa. Her hair was shoved into a messy bun that was falling apart, her eyes were wild and bloodshot, and she was clutching her phone like a weapon. Her other hand was balled into a white-knuckled fist. I didn't open the door. I didn't even make a sound. I just stood there, a silent observer to her unraveling. She hammered again, harder this time. Then she started screaming my name. Not calling it, screaming it. Marcus, open the door. You can't do this. You can't just cancel the lodge. We have guests coming. I already sent the invites, Marcus. Open the damn door. I backed away from the door, not out of fear, but out of a profound sense of revulsion. She kept going, launched into a frantic rant about how I was sick in the head, how I had ruined everything, and how Mom and Dad were 100% on her side. Her voice eventually cracked, shifting from rage to a jagged, hysterical sob. At one point, I heard her put someone on speakerphone, likely Jordan, yelling, Tell him what you said about him." But there was no response from the other end. Jordan had clearly opted out of the circus. Out of the corner of my window, I saw the neighborhood waking up to the drama. Old Mrs. Keene across the street was pulling her curtains back just enough to catch the show. A man walking his golden retriever slowed to a crawl, staring at the grown woman having a meltdown on my porch. I stayed inside, detached and still. This wasn't my mess to clean up anymore. I wasn't the fixer today. Eventually, her voice gave out. She banged on the wood one last time, spat a curse word under her breath, and stormed back to her car, peeling out so fast her tires screeched. I didn't move for a long time. I just stood in the dim light of my foyer, listening to the silence return. Later that evening, a text came through from Liam. It was just 3 words. I heard everything. I stared at it, wondering if he was about to jump on the Marcus is a monster bandwagon. But then, a second bubble popped up. I'm not picking sides, but you're not crazy. It was the closest thing to validation I'd received in decades. It was the first crack in the family facade. But the real shift, the tectonic plate movement, happened a few days later. My dad, a man who treats family drama like a radioactive zone and almost never texts me first, sent a message that chilled me to the bone. We need to talk. You see, Alyssa's little performance on my porch had done more than just annoy the neighbors. It had exposed the rot. Her screaming had revealed the lies she told about threats and sabotage. For the first time in my life, the family was being forced to see the truth. But they weren't all ready to face it. Not yet. Not until Alyssa did something even more desperate, something so fundamentally broken that it finally made my mom call me in genuine, heartbroken tears. They say rock bottom isn't a single moment. It's a slow, terrifying realization, like falling into freezing water and not noticing how deep you've actually sunk until you look up and realize you can't see the surface anymore. That's what the week after the porch meltdown felt like. I had effectively dropped out of my own family. No group chat pings. No thinking of you texts from mom. No minion memes. I was 34 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was completely on the outside looking in. And God, it was cold out here. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was loud. It was a heavy, suffocating presence that filled every corner of my apartment. At work, I played the part of the consummate professional. I smiled on Zoom calls, hit every deadline with surgical precision, and cracked dry, self-deprecating jokes in the Slack channels like my life wasn't currently a smoking crater. I was a master of the mask, but the mask was exhausting. I started staying late at the office, volunteering for mind-numbing data entry just to avoid going home to the quiet. I'd take the long way back, driving aimlessly through the suburbs, eventually pulling into some fluorescent-lit, 24-hour diner or a greasy drive-thru. I didn't ask questions. I just sat in my car in the back of the parking lot, eating lukewarm fries like a ghost of my former self, watching the world go by through a fogged-up windshield. The worst part, the part that made me hate myself, was the phone. Even after blocking Alyssa, even after letting Mom's guilt-tripping voicemails rot in my inbox, even after Liam's brief moment of solidarity, I kept checking it. Every few minutes, my thumb would habitually swipe the screen, hoping for something real. Not a demand for money, not another accusation of being drama, just an acknowledgement. Thank you. We messed up. But the screen remained cold. I became a phantom in my own family. I stopped showing up to Sunday dinners. I ghosted the surprise bachelor barbecue for Jordan. Yeah, apparently that was still happening. The show must go on, even if the stage has been repossessed. I only knew it was happening because Liam sent me a grainy photo of a sagging folding table covered in lukewarm burgers and cheap beer cans. His caption read, "He's barely talking to her. The vibe is trash." I didn't reply. I just zoomed in on Jordan's face. He looked miserable, his eyes distant, like a man realizing he was boarding a sinking ship. Alyssa wasn't even in the frame. That's when it clicked. This wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was my personal crucifixion, and Alyssa was more than happy to light the match herself as long as the flames kept the spotlight on her. And for what? A few thousands of my dollars? A sense of control? A Pinterest-perfect lie? I chewed on those questions every night until they tasted like ash. But the more I sat with the pain, the more a new thought began to germinate in the ruins of my ego. What if this wasn't my downfall? What if this was the main character origin story I actually needed? It didn't happen overnight. There was no cinematic montage with a sunrise and a motivational soundtrack. It was smaller, quieter, and much more gritty. It started with a deep clean. I didn't just wipe the counters. I went to war with my living space. I tossed out boxes of junk I'd been clinging to, just in case. I reorganized every drawer, vacuumed the dust bunnies from behind the couch, and eventually found an old shoebox full of physical photos. I sat on the floor, surrounded by my own history. There I was at 20, grinning with friends I'd let slip away because I was too busy fixing things for my parents. There was a younger Liam in a ridiculous dinosaur costume. And then there was a rare one, Alyssa and me, ages maybe 7 and 12, sitting on the living room rug playing cards. We looked happy. Or maybe we just looked unaware. Kids have that luxury. They don't see the short leg on the family table yet. I stared at that photo for a long time before tucking it away. That same afternoon, I logged into my bank account and watched the $5,000 from the wedding refunds land back into my savings. It felt symbolic. It wasn't just cash. It was a reclaimed piece of my soul. That night, I opened a notebook. I didn't journal or vent, I plotted. I wrote down the dreams I'd shelved for years because I was too busy being the family safety net. One idea kept screaming for attention. I'd always wanted to start a side hustle, something of my own, built on my own terms. For 34 years, I'd helped everyone else build their life. It was time to build mine. I didn't do anything reckless. I'm not the quit your job and move to Bali type. I started small. I've always been the Best Buy in a hoodie guy, fixing gadgets, optimizing home networks, the human version of a turn it off and back on again manual. I set up a simple landing page, offered affordable tech support for the local neighborhood, and posted a few flyers in the local Facebook group. I expected cricket. I got 3 clients in the first week. One was a sweet elderly woman who had lost her Wi-Fi password and felt like she'd lost her connection to the world. Another was a stressed-out single mom whose printer had decided to die the night before her kid's big school project. The third was a local cafe owner whose POS system kept crashing during the lunch rush. I spent 2 hours in that cafe, elbow-deep in cables and software settings. When the screen finally flickered to life and the receipts started printing, the owner looked at me like I'd just performed a miracle. He gave me a free meal and a look of genuine respect. "You're a lifesaver, Marcus," he said. "I've had 2 professionals come in here and mess it up worse. You actually listened to what the problem was. You actually listened." Those words hit me harder than any of Alyssa's insults. You actually listened. Maybe that was the missing piece. My family used me, they needed me, they expected me to be their foundation, but they never actually listened to a word I said. The more I worked with these strangers, people who had no stake in my past and no baggage to dump on me, the more I started to feel seen. I wasn't the responsible brother or the fix-it son. I was just Marcus, a guy who was good at his job, who solved problems, and who expected nothing in return but basic human decency. The side hustle didn't just grow, it thrived. And as the noise of my new life grew louder, the silence from my family started to matter less and less. I was building something they couldn't touch, something they couldn't cancel, and something they definitely couldn't afford. By the end of the month, the silence that had once been a suffocating weight had transformed into a focused, productive hum. I wasn't just fixing gadgets anymore. I had a dozen regulars. I filed for an LLC, Marcus Tech Solutions, built a sleek booking system, and watched the 5-star reviews roll in like a slow-motion tidal wave of validation. One of my cafe regulars, a graphic designer who I'd helped recover a lost portfolio from a corrupted hard drive, redesigned my logo for free. Another client, a grandmother who could finally FaceTime her grandkids without the screen freezing, referred me to her entire church group. Suddenly, I was hosting Tech 101 workshops in community centers. I was the guy people called when they felt overwhelmed by the digital world, and for the first time in 34 years, I was happy. It wasn't that loud, boastful, look at me, happiness Alyssa always chased. It was a steady, grounding contentment. I stopped checking the family group chat. I stopped waiting for an apology that I knew, deep down, would be hollow. I had finally stopped being the family's structural support beam and started building my own foundation. But the universe has a twisted sense of irony and a very specific sense of timing. It was a Tuesday. I had just finished installing a complex mesh Wi-Fi network for a local independent bookstore. They'd paid me in a box of vintage hardback thrillers and a genuine handshake. I was walking to my car, feeling the sun on my face, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Usually, I'd let an unknown caller go to voicemail, but a sudden, sharp instinct told me to pick up. Hello? The sound that came through the speaker wasn't a voice at first. It was a sob. A raw, ragged, ugly sound. It was my mother. And for once, these weren't the performative, manipulative woe is me sniffles she used to get her way. This was the sound of a woman whose world had just imploded. Marcus, she choked out. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know what to say. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer a fix. I just stood by my car and listened. The dam had finally burst, and the truth was flooding out. She explained that after Alyssa's unhinged meltdown on my porch, my sister hadn't gone home to reflect. She had gone on a warpath. She told the entire family I had stolen the venue money. She spun a frantic web of lies, claiming I was blackmailing her and actively sabotaging her relationship with Jordan. She tried to paint me as a jealous, obsessive monster, but it backfired. Jordan, quiet, observant, IT professional Jordan, had finally reached his limit. He didn't just take her word for it this time. He asked for receipt. He asked for proof. He asked for a single shred of evidence that I had done anything other than pay for her life. Alyssa had nothing but tears and more lies. When she realized the walls were closing in, she doubled down. She screamed that I'd always been obsessed with control, that I hated her, and that I was trying to ruin her out of pure spite. Jordan walked out. 2 weeks before the wedding, he called the whole thing off. He told my parents flat out that he couldn't marry someone so fundamentally dishonest. He told them he couldn't link his life to someone who would treat her own brother like a disposable ATM and then frame him as a criminal. That was when the family finally saw the truth. But as I listened to Mom cry, a cold realization hit me. They didn't defend me because I was right. They didn't defend me because they loved me. They only turned on Alyssa because it was finally socially embarrassing to stand by her. The mask didn't slip. It was ripped off by the one person they couldn't afford to lose, the groom. I don't know how to make this right, Mom whispered. Your father. He's so ashamed he can't even speak to you. Liam is furious. Alyssa is staying at a friend's place and refusing to answer our calls. I don't expect you to forgive us, Marcus. But we see it now. We're so sorry. I sat on the edge of my bed back at the apartment, the muffled sounds of city traffic leaking through the window. I realized this wasn't an apology designed to heal me. It was a confession designed to unburden them. They wanted me to say, "It's okay," so they could stop feeling like the villains in my story. "I'm not angry anymore, Mom," I said, my voice as steady as a heartbeat. "But I'm not coming back either. I've started building something better. A real life. And I'm not going to burn it down just because the people who left me in the freezing cold decided they finally want to come inside where it's warm." That was the fall. This was my rise. But Alyssa? Alyssa wasn't a graceful loser. When she found out Jordan was truly gone and the wedding was a corpse, she went nuclear. She decided if she couldn't have her fairy tale, I shouldn't have my business. 3 days after that call from Mom, I was in the middle of a job for a lovely elderly couple, setting up their mesh Wi-Fi so they could see their grandkids. They just handed me a plate of warm lemon bars and a check when my phone chirped with a PayPal notification. Dispute opened. Case number 8821. Reason: unauthorized transaction/service not received. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I opened the app. The name on the complaint: Alyssa Miller. She wasn't just coming for my peace of mind anymore. She was coming for my livelihood. She was disputing every single payment I had made to the vendors, claiming I had used her identity or that the services were fraudulent. She was trying to claw back the money I'd already spent, which would leave me in a massive deficit with the bank. I stared at the invoice on my screen, the lemon bar suddenly tasting like cardboard. She was trying to bankrupt me as a final parting gift. But what she forgot was that I keep receipts. I keep logs. And as a tech guy, I keep backups of everything. The drama was far from over. It was time for the pro-revenge phase to enter the chat. It was the retainer I had paid the DJ. The same DJ I had cancelled weeks ago and already settled the refund for. My blood ran cold as I scrolled. She had dug through her old emails, found one of the few payment confirmations I'd routed through her address for the sake of transparency, and was now trying to reverse it by claiming I had fraudulently accessed her accounts to move money. It was unreal. It was pathological. And that was just the opening salvo. By the time I pulled into my driveway and killed the engine, my phone pinged with 3 more notifications. Disputes were popping up like digital landmines. One through Zelle, one through Venmo, and a particularly nasty flag from the boutique floral shop that had already refunded me directly. Apparently, Alyssa had called them, masquerading as a victim of identity theft, demanding they verify the ownership of the transaction. She wasn't just throwing a tantrum anymore. This was a digital scorched earth policy, messy, frantic, and dripping with pure, unadulterated malice. She didn't actually care about the vendors, and she definitely didn't care about the money. She just wanted to see me ruined. She wanted to watch the reliable brother lose his stability. But for the first time in my 34 years of life, I didn't panic. I didn't feel that familiar, nauseating urge to call her and beg her to be reasonable. Instead, I felt a strange, icy calm. I went inside, brewed a pot of coffee, and went to work. I documented every single scrap of evidence. Screenshots of the original agreements, time-stamped receipts, the trail of text messages where she begged for the money, voicemails of her thanking me, and the final cancellation emails from the vendors that clearly showed my name, and only my name, on the contracts. I drafted a professional, clinical response to every single dispute. I uploaded the PDF. I didn't use emotional language. I had learned a hard lesson over the last month. The more chaotic a person becomes, the more power you gain by remaining the most rational person in the room. Still, a knot tightened in my stomach. This wasn't her usual golden child meltdown. This felt surgical. She was targeting my new business, my credit score, and my financial sanity. It wasn't working. PayPal and the banks were already flagging her claims as inconsistent, but it was clear she was just warming up. I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for the next blow. I spent the next 48 hours fortifying my life like I was preparing for a siege. I moved my business banking to an entirely different institution to sever any lingering digital ties. I upgraded every single password to randomized, 64-character, vault-protected strings. I slapped two-factor authentication on everything from my email to my grocery app. I moved all client communications to encrypted platforms and implemented mandatory e-signature contracts for every new job. Then, I called in the cavalry. A friend referred me to a sharp, no-nonsense solo attorney named Erica. She specialized in small business law and digital fraud, exactly the kind of shark I needed. I handed her a thumb drive containing every interaction I'd had with Alyssa over the last 6 months. Erica read through the logs, her face a mask of professional boredom. "She's got no legal standing, Marcus," she said, leaning back. "These disputes will fail. But if she's this determined, she's going to escalate. You need to be ready for the pivot." "What does escalate look like?" I asked. "It means she stops playing games with apps and starts trying to kill your name," Erica warned. I thought she was being paranoid until Liam called the next morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, half awake and nursing a bowl of cereal, when the phone buzzed. "Hey bro," Liam's voice was low, strained. "I think you need to see this. Now." "What happened?" She posted on Facebook. Publicly. That woke me up faster than the caffeine. "Posted what?" He hesitated, then started reading the text aloud, his voice dripping with disbelief. "My own brother sabotaged my wedding out of pure jealousy. He canceled everything behind my back and then stole the money I had saved. He is emotionally unstable and has a long history of manipulation. I'm done protecting him. If anyone is considering hiring his tech business, just know who you're really dealing with." My heart sank into the pit of my stomach. I pulled up Facebook on my laptop. She had me blocked, of course, but Liam was texting me the screenshots in real time. There it was, displayed for the whole world to see. A long, rambling, dramatic post filled with broken heart emojis and the kind of damsel in distress bait she was famous for. The comments were a bloodbath. Distant cousins were chiming in with, "I always knew he was off." Former coworkers of mine were asking, "Wait, is this true?" People were offering thoughts and prayers to the poor, victimized bride. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just throwing a fit. She was poisoning the well. This wasn't about the $5,000 anymore. It was about my reputation. I had taken away her control by refusing to be her doormat, and now she was trying to ensure I never had a career or a shred of respect again. But Alyssa had made a fatal calculation error. She was still treating me like the guy who would pay a $1,750 dress deposit out of a sense of duty. She thought I was still the fixer, who would eventually cave just to make the noise stop. She was wrong. I was done fixing things for people who would rather set my life on fire than say, "Thank you." I wasn't going to sit back and wait for the flames to die down on their own. I was going to fight back, but I wasn't going to get down in the mud with her. No comment wars. No vague, defensive posts. No screaming matches. I was going to hit her where it hurt most. Her precious, manufactured credibility. I called Erica back. "It's time," I said. "Send the letter. And file the defamation suit." I didn't just sit there and take it. I went to work. I created a new section on my business website, a transparency and integrity page. I laid out my standard operating procedures, refund policies, and redacted vendor agreements as proof of professional conduct. No names were mentioned, but the dates and the cold, hard numbers of the refunds were there for anyone with a brain to see. Then, I posted a public statement on my business socials. It was brief, surgical, and devoid of the hysterical emojis Alyssa loved. Recent personal attacks have surfaced regarding my involvement in a cancelled event. While I typically do not address private family matters in a professional forum, I take my business integrity seriously. Full refunds have been processed for all involved vendors, and legal documentation is available to disprove any claims of financial impropriety. I remain committed to serving this community with honesty. I then reached out to a client of mine who runs a popular local events and lifestyle blog. I explained the situation with the detached tone of a man reporting a weather pattern. She was appalled. She offered to write a feature piece on the rising trend of wedding vendor fraud and social media defamation. She used my experience as the primary case study, changing names but keeping the gritty details of the digital paper trail intact. That article blew up. Locally, the narrative didn't just shift, it flipped. The poor bride comments on Alyssa's Facebook wall started disappearing. People who had piled on me suddenly went silent, and one by one, the "praying for you" messages were deleted. A few mutual acquaintances slid into my DMs. "Hey Marcus, just read the blog. Man, I'm so sorry for assuming. That's insane." It was subtle. It was quiet. But I could feel the wind changing. I was winning. Alyssa, predictably, was spiraling into a total ego death. Liam sent me a screenshot of her latest Instagram story. White text on a black background, the hallmark of a mid-tier narcissist in crisis. "It's so funny how narcissists pretend to be calm while they destroy everything around them," she wrote. "Stay away from people who make you question your reality. When the truth doesn't fit their story, they just rewrite your character." Classic projection. I didn't engage. I didn't even seen it. I was busy with the next phase. While she was lobbing emotional grenades into the void, I was speaking to the one person who knew her curated version better than anyone: Jordan. Her ex-fiancé reached out the day after her Facebook hit piece went live. He sounded hollowed out, like a man who had just escaped a house fire and realized he'd left his shoes inside. "I didn't want to get involved, Marcus," he said, his voice cracking. "But seeing what she's trying to do to your business, I can't sit by. I should have seen it sooner. She always made you sound so cold, so controlling. She told me you never supported her. I didn't question it until she turned that same venom on me the second the money stopped flowing. We talked for over an hour. And that's when Jordan dropped the nuke. He had recordings. Not because he was some amateur spy, but because Alyssa had a habit of gaslighting him so severely that he'd started keeping voice memos of their discussions, just to protect his own sanity. He sent me a few clips. In the first one, her voice was high and mocking. "Marcus thinks he's so clever. He'll pay for the whole thing, and then I'll just cut him out once the check's clear. He won't do anything. He never does. He's a doormat with a bank account." In another, the malice was chilling. "If he ever makes a scene or tries to get the money back, I'll just tell everyone he's mentally unstable. People believe women, especially brides. He doesn't stand a chance against me." I sat at my desk, jaw slack, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was the proof I didn't even know existed. I wasn't just defending myself against a sibling rivalry anymore. I was the victim of premeditated, malicious defamation. I sent the clips to Erica immediately. My lawyer, usually the personification of unimpressed, was visibly stunned. "Marcus," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "we don't just have grounds to defend you. We have grounds to pursue massive damages. Do you want to go nuclear?" After reviewing the evidence and hearing the recordings, Erica had reached out to him formally. She asked if he would be willing to provide a sworn affidavit confirming the audio clips and backing my defamation claims. Jordan didn't even hesitate. He was done being a supporting character in Alyssa's fiction. The moment she realized her ex-fiancé was now legally aligned with her ex-target, her entire world didn't just crack. It crumbled into dust. Liam gave me the play-by-play. I'd been keeping my distance from him for self-preservation, but once the legal notice hit, the family drama exploded into the stratosphere, and he couldn't stay quiet. Apparently, Alyssa called an emergency family meeting. She dragged my parents, Liam, and even an elderly aunt into the living room of our childhood home. It was like a parody of a war room. She had printed out everything: my business posts, Jordan's statements, the legal notice. She paced the floor, shaking, not with fear, but with a pure, narcissistic fury. She was screaming about reputation damage, accusing Jordan of a Judas betrayal, and claiming I had weaponized my status as the big brother to ruin her for attention. But for the first time in her life, the room didn't nod back. Liam told me Dad, usually the king of let's just keep the peace, stood up in the middle of her rant. The room went dead silent. He looked at Alyssa, really looked at her, and said, "Enough. We believed you because we wanted to," Dad told her, his voice heavy with a lifetime of regret. "Because it was easier than seeing the truth. But Marcus warned us. He's been the one holding this house together for years, and we failed him. We are done." Alyssa didn't apologize. She didn't break down. She snapped, grabbed her bag, and stormed out, slamming the heavy oak door so hard the frames on the wall rattled. She's always been world-class at making an exit, but she's never learned how to handle accountability. The fallout was swift and clinical. Erica sent the formal settlement request, $12,500. It wasn't a get-rich number. It was a calculated sum to cover my business damages, the legal fees, and the measurable emotional toll of the smear campaign. It was reasonable, which made it even more terrifying for her. Even her friends were jumping ship. The woman she'd been couch-surfing with emailed Erica directly. She wanted out. She said Alyssa had been explosive, moody, and refused to lift a finger or take responsibility. To clear her own conscience, the friend forwarded us a string of texts Alyssa had sent while the Facebook campaign was active. They were cruel, targeted, and laid out her intent to destroy Marcus's little hobby business, in plain English. More ammunition for the pile. Erica made the final offer. Pay the settlement within 30 days, delete every defamatory post, and issue a formal, written apology, or we go to discovery in open court. I expected her to drag it out. I expected a fight. But the fight was gone. She paid. I suspect Mom and Dad fronted the cash by dipping into what was left of their retirement, a final, expensive lesson in the cost of enabling a golden child. I didn't ask, and frankly, I didn't care. The money felt like poetic closure, sure, but it wasn't about the bank account. It was about the line in the sand. The apology she eventually sent was short, bitter, and clearly written by someone who hated every word they were typing. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever read. I took that $12,500 and reinvested every penny into Marcus Tech Solutions. I bought a dedicated service vehicle, upgraded my gear, and moved into a new office space that didn't feel like a fortress. My business is thriving, my name is clear, and for the first time in 34 years, the table I'm sitting at doesn't have a short leg. I'm not the fixer anymore. I'm just Marcus, and that's more than enough. A single line appeared on my Facebook feed at 6:14 p.m. It was plain, unadorned, and clearly written under the duress of a legal ultimatum. It read, "I said some things about my brother that weren't accurate. I apologize for any confusion caused. No admission of a coordinated smear campaign. No remorse for the thousands of dollars she tried to claw back. No mention of the voice recordings where she bragged about ruining me because she thought I was a spineless doormat." It was a classic, cold, public retreat. But in the world of r/pro-revenge and real-life reputation management, it was more than enough. The digital vultures who had circled my business profile with "praying for you" emojis and "I knew it" comments suddenly went silent. The post acted like a bug zapper for the drama. One by one, the toxic comments were deleted as people realized they had backed the wrong horse. The ripples of her confession were felt immediately. A former high-value client, who had been ghosting my follow-up emails for weeks because of the controversy, reached out within the hour. She didn't offer a direct apology, but she didn't have to. She offered me a massive contract setting up a tech center for her local nonprofit. I accepted with the same professional grace I'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. My business didn't just survive, it thrived. There is a specific kind of respect people have for a person who faces a hurricane of lies and comes out the other side without screaming. They admire resilience. They value the guy who stays calm while the world around him is losing its mind. As the weeks turned into months, the static finally faded. Alyssa moved out of state about 30 days after the settlement cleared. She claimed she needed a fresh start and a new environment, which is narcissists speak for. Everyone here knows I'm a liar. I don't know which state she moved to. I didn't ask, and I certainly didn't check her Instagram. I haven't heard her voice or seen her face since the day she screamed on my porch, and the silence is the most expensive gift I've ever received. Mom and Dad are still trapped in their cycle of peace at any cost. They've started inviting me to Sunday dinners again, sending me casual texts asking how the little business is going, trying to pave over the crater of their betrayal with small talk. I keep my answers polite, but I keep them short. I'm not cruel, but I am guarded. They need to understand that forgiveness is an internal process, not a familial obligation. You don't get to believe a lie for 30 years and then expect a seat at the head of the table the moment the truth becomes undeniable. Liam and I are actually solid now. He's been helping me out with some of the larger client installs on the weekends, and we've grabbed drinks a few times without the shadow of our sister hanging over the booth. There's no awkwardness anymore, just a quiet, mutual understanding. He stayed neutral during the war, which used to hurt, but I've realized he never once lied for her. In my family, that's practically an act of heroism. I respect that. And me? I'm doing better than good. I upgraded to a spacious new apartment with a dedicated home office that smells like expensive coffee and success. I've brought on 2 part-time tech contractors to handle the overflow of my growing client base, and I've even started a weekend mentoring program for local teens interested in IT and cybersecurity. Every time I sit down with one of those kids to explain a complex network diagram, I find myself thinking about how different my life would have been if someone had taught me the value of my own boundaries when I was their age. If someone had told me that being the responsible one shouldn't mean being the family's punching bag. That realization is the real pro-revenge. It's not the $12,500 settlement check. It's not the public apology or the satisfaction of seeing her golden child, crown tarnished in front of the neighbors. The real revenge is building a life so structurally sound, so deeply fulfilling, and so authentically mine that the people who tried to break me can't even reach the doorbell anymore. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more content like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I try to read as many as I can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.